DETV Sports Update is powered by DART, Delaware's transit service. Moving forward.
And what's up, everyone, and welcome into another sports update here on DETV Channel 28. The whole crew coming at you here on a Tuesday evening. We are not, though, in the studio. I believe Dennis is behind the glass back in Wilmington, but myself, Jason McCall, and Matthew Maurer, who I welcome in now, we are spread across the state here. We are going to do a Zoom show tonight, unable to get into Wilmington, but we're excited just to be able to talk some football from the wild card weekend, or at least some of us are, as we had a few games to talk about. And it starts early.
Fire the cannons.
There you go. If you didn't know, our phenomenal director, producer, Dennis Pritchett, is a big Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. They played the Eagles last night. Dennis got the better of me in that matchup here, a 32-9 victory for his Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just a few years removed from their Super Bowl championship with Tom Brady. So, Dennis, I just want to say congratulations on the playoff win. Congratulations on the division title there, at 9-8 in the NFC South. Again, you got to celebrate that as well. And now they're on to the divisional round. So, shout out to Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They took care of business at home last night. And we'll see what Dennis has for the title coming up, or the headline of the game last night here that'll be popping up shortly. But it was a collapse of the Eagles. Tampa Bay dominated that game almost from start to finish. Shouldn't have been 16-9 like it was at the half. It was way closer than maybe the game kind of looked, but they were able to pull away late, Tampa that is, and they got the victory 32-9. So before we dive into that one, Jason, Matt, how you guys doing? A little Zoom show today. How was your Tuesday?
Great. Why wouldn't it be? Got to see the Dodgers collapse. Got to see the Eagles collapse. It was a beautiful, for a San Francisco fan. It was a good day, man. Good day. I'm happy. How about you, Jason?
I'm equally happy because not only did those two teams lose, but the Steelers lost. We helped them out to get in the playoffs. They talked trash all week long. Right. Then they laid an egg against Buffalo. So I too am happy about this week's scores.
Well, again, at least we have my Buffalo Bills still going strong, trying to represent me in the Super Bowl here out of the NFC this year. We'll see how that goes. But Jason, first off, congratulations. Pretty good on your picks over the weekend. I'll tell you, if you would have listened to Jason, you might have made yourself a pretty penny over there at Delaware Park. Jason calling some big-time winners. We'll get his picks as well as Matt and myself's picks here in a little while. We'll have Dennis's question of the evening. And, of course, we'll preview and recap some of the games we saw this past weekend, and then we'll close it out with some other subjects that maybe we're going to want to talk about here in the sports world. So without further ado, guys, let's dive in to the Eagles, and we're going to pick up kind of where we left off last weekend. A question that we had on the show was, should Nick Sirianni, be fired? Should that be a conversation? And that was a discussion last week. I didn't think that they should fire him. Then they come out, they look like this against Tampa on a Monday night. I'm still in that same boat, don't get me wrong. I don't think they should fire him still, but with that being said, you got to have a real discussion about it now, the way they look, dropping 6 of the final 7. They just did not look at all engaged in that game in Tampa Bay last night. I mean, the tackling was some of the most poor tackling I've ever seen in an NFL game, especially in the playoffs from a team like that started 10-1. So it was brutal from all angles. Jalen Hurts didn't look like himself at all throughout the last 7 weeks of the season after being a favorite for MVP through 12 weeks. I'm not sure if that was an injury, whatever. We'll see if something else comes out there. But in totality, it was just a total team collapse. Matt, take it away. What do you think about Nick Sirianni? Are you standing by what you said last week? Maybe he should be fired. And if you do believe that, which I have an idea that you might, where should they go, or who should they be looking at?
I mean, really, it depends on what Jeff Lurie wants to do. I mean, at the end of the day, he's going to have to get a coach who he has to allow to coach. I mean, at the end of the day, what does Nick Sirianni do here? What does he really do? I mean, this was a guy who was hired. He was an OC. He's supposed to, but he doesn't run his own offense. And that kind of got taken from him really early by Shane Steichen, who did a brilliant job last year. he still doesn't do any play calling now. What is it that you say that Nick Sirianni does? I mean, other than make faces on the sidelines, I guess hang five with with the security dom. I don't know what else he does. I mean, at the end of the day, I think when you lose 6 out of 7 games, I mean, that to me is a huge indictment on his leadership. I don't think he knows how to coach. I don't think he has any clue how to galvanize a group of millionaires and get them to have one accord and have one vision for the future of that franchise. And as I said before, I think that franchise the time is ticking. I don't know what more they need to have with Jason Kelsey basically saying he's done. I mean, that's what we're hearing from the teammates there. He said they got all indications that he's retiring. Lane Johnson's getting more and more long in the tooth. And they have guys that they're going to have to pay, and they're going to have to start making sacrifices now. You were kind of playing with the house money with Hurts and some of the pieces they got, and now they're going to have to start making choices that are going to start to hurt. And if you ask me, I just don't understand what more they need. What more evidence do they need that this guy isn't going to get it done? I think it's great when you go through a season and you don't really have any real obstacles and everything is sunshine and rainbows. But as we know, the number one attribute that every coach must have in the NFL, I think we see this with every good coach, is they need to make adjustments. We saw this with the Buffalo Bills. They had to win out. You saw this with San Francisco. They had to win 3 straight. You saw that. I mean, after losing 3 straight, they somehow, Kyle Shanahan got the team back on track. You saw this with, the Ravens when they had their offseason issues with Lamar's contract and that controversy. They still somehow got their players to buy into the vision and the future and the goal of the season. I just don't see Nick Sirianni as a guy that can do that. I just don't. I would love anybody to tell me what he does. He doesn't bring culture. He doesn't do play calling, and he doesn't do leadership. So at the end of the day, other than making faces, slapping fives with the Dom, and giving weird press conferences, I don't know what else he does.
Ooh. Yeah, Jason, how do you feel about the situation?
I don't know how to follow it up.
It all out there, right? Laid it all out for us.
No, but honestly, I kind of do echo a lot of Matt's sentiments. I would say that Coach Sirianni, he's I hate to put it this way, but he's more of a puppet in the organization, because we know the true leader of the Philadelphia Eagles organization overall, with everything, all decisions made, is Jeffrey Lurie. So it really is Lurie's decision whether Sirianni stays or goes. I mean, he does have a winning record, been in the playoffs each of the first 3 seasons as a head coach. However, I will say this, and I'm not trying to pile anything on or anything like that, but I think from what I saw, what I've seen the rest of the season, and including last night, that once the 49ers played you guys in Philly and essentially took your heart, the season changed after that. And it was just steadily downhill afterwards. And and one of the biggest mistakes was actually demoting your coordinator during the season. Either you fire him or let him make adjustments. But demoting him pretty much made him powerless, but he's still on the sidelines. He's still involved in game day decisions, but didn't make any sense, because now you're having people who were taught a certain way or certain schemes from this coach. Then you bring in the pencil, who is only famous for that said pencil and being a Belichick disciple, because he hadn't done anything else since New England. I mean, it's tough. And then you had the locker room friction with AJ's antics, reminding me of 05 TO, if you will. So you got a decision to make with that. And like I said a few weeks ago, the offense never cooks at the same time. There's always a different chef in the kitchen. It's never a collective effort where you got Hurts rolling, you got Devontae rolling, you got AJ rolling, you got Swift rolling, you got Dallas Goedert rolling. Everyone has an A game, B game type of scenario, and you can't win like that. And then the defense was just simply atrocious. And last night was the icing on the cake. I mean, I've seen better tackling in a 5 and under Pop Warner football game compared to what I saw last night on the field. So some decisions had to be made. I know we're talking about firing Sirianni last week, and now this has more feel to it. But if you keep him, let's say if you keep him, who's going to come in as offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator that's going to turn it around? But at the same time, you run the risk of having the players listen more to the coordinators than do their head coach. So a lot of decisions got to be made. And then the fact that y'all let Kelsey walk out there crying, he retired on the spot, that says a lot.
Yeah, that's a tough way to go out, I thought, especially for a guy like Jason Kelly, who's meant so much to the city, part of that first Super Bowl team, the speech, you name it, one of the best centers of all time. So, again, not the right way with that. Of course, we and everybody else wanted him to go out, so that's a shame there. And, again, what a career. So, of course, a sad day, but also celebrating what he's been able to do throughout his career for sure. You mentioned we talked about Jalen Hurts, and he's coming off that contract now. And once you sign that quarterback to that contract and use that money, as Matt said earlier and throughout the season, that makes everything substantially tougher to build a team around you. Again, they lost 9 guys on defense. The first coach ever to go to the Super Bowl, then come back the next season and lose both coordinators. That's never happened before. I know that seems weird, but it happened this year, and I think it really, really didn't work out for him. And Matt said it, Shane Steichen, I think that's the biggest issue, him going to Indy. Again, Nick Sirianni doesn't call his own plays. We'll see if that changes maybe next year. Maybe he gets that role back if he's there. So we'll have to see what happens with the Eagles in this situation. I will say yesterday, watching the game, and if you guys watched it as intently as I did and going back over it afterwards, when you got guys, they lost Julio Jones early. And besides Devontae Smith, I mean, they got, first off, away from the run way too early. They ran the ball 2 times, picked up some good yards in that first drive, didn't go back to it. They got down, and they kind of shied away from it. I disagreed with that. But they had no weapons in that. I mean, really no weapon. They had no A.J. Brown. Their 3 receivers were Quez Watkins, Olamide Zacchaeus, and Devontae Smith. Devontae did his part. I just think there has to be some and that's what I'm saying. And that's on Howie Roseman, right? I mean, bringing in Julio was supposed to be a big deal. Julio's done. Julio Jones really thought that was going to be the difference maker? So I think it goes on both sides. I think the coaching's been bad, and I think Howie in terms of some of the roster building, Matt.
Yeah, I think – Howie, I think if he doesn't get himself together, he's going to be next. Listen, the guy is great. He's a solid GM. I have no real huge nasty remarks about Howie, but I can tell you this: the guy can't draft defenses. He does decent on linemen, great, but really when we're talking about defenses, when we're talking about other positions, he comes up lame in the drafts a lot. And
wide receivers the worst.
And Devontae Smith, let me tell you something. That guy is a star. He played really good yesterday. I'm sorry, the day before. It was brilliant. I love his future. But I'll say this, what Jason picked up about Matt Patricia. I think that's kind of the issue in a nutshell is really what I'm kind of hitting at with Nick Sirianni. I mean, we all understand that Jeffrey Lurie is a guy that's a hands-on owner. He's kind of like cut from that Jerry Jones, Mark Cuban type cloth. He likes to get in there. He likes to tinker. He likes to do his little thing. But at the end of the day, I don't think that decision was a Nick Sirianni decision. I'm going to be totally a little bit on Nick Sirianni's side on this. But I will say this: Nick also didn't put his neck out there to protect his DC. He also didn't go out there and support his guy. He kind of said, look, you want Matt Patricia? We'll do Matt Patricia. And that's really, at the end of the day, my problem with Nick. I just think he's a placeholder. He's a puppet. And I just think at the end of the day, I don't think this guy has any chutzpah. I don't think he's got any I hate to even use this word, but I just don't think he has any desire to fight for guys and for those players. And I seen some of the comments that there were players that, fought for him that said that they think he'll be good. But even Jalen Hurts, even as much as he is the $50 million man, he didn't really go out there and really plant his flag on Nick. He kind of was, like, oh, yeah, you think he's leaving or you heard he's leaving? Like, he kind of was playful with it. He really didn't plant his flag on him and say, this is my coach, this is my guy. I'm not going to be here if he's not here. He really didn't make that kind of proclamation. He kind of did it tongue in cheek. And I think at the end of the day, I think that's kind of showing what we see. I mean, there were rumors about A.J. Brown for weeks at a time, and A.J. really played it well. He kind of said that it wasn't the media. He kind of said it wasn't his teammates. So then who else could it be? Well, I think it was the leadership. I think it was the coaching. I think A.J. Brown didn't like what was going on with those coaches, didn't think that they knew what they were doing. And at the end of the day, it's crazy to say this, DeAndre Swift is a better natural runner than Miles Sanders, but for some reason in this offense without Shane Steichen, they don't know how to run. And Jalen Hurts doesn't know how to run. And I don't know if Jalen Hurts is making business decisions out there or if he totally just felt inept in this offense. Because at the end of the day, I think I saw a graphic where they calculated how much of those bubble screens and what they equaled for the offense. It was like negative 16 yards.
Negative 26 yards for the season. I saw that stat too. Yeah.
That's crazy. That just shows you the rest of the NFL. And I say this all the time with everybody. The NFL is the greatest league at taking what you do well one season, and the next season they put it under the microscope and they make their adjustments. And if you don't make your adjustments, you're in trouble.
Yeah, again, they got away from that run early last night.
I mean, well, you got away from the run essentially all season after the first two or three games, and it doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense. I mean, I have a lot of Eagles fans who are friends, and they were calling out the offense on Facebook and all the social media sites all season long, and they were essentially right. It was like, okay, it was like they were running Madden plays. You know, you get these suggestions. And that's what it was like the entire season. There's just running suggestions, and everybody knows after a while you can pick up on said suggestions and shut it down, and you're going to know when the play is coming before it comes. But last night's loss, it wasn't even X's and O's. Honestly, it was pure just lack of effort on both sides.
They didn't show up. They didn't show up. Didn't even not even out on the play.
And similar to the Cowboys games we're getting to later on, same thing, lack of effort. But how do you go into a playoff game without effort? What the Hermit would say, you play to win the game. You know, you're in the playoffs. Like, why would you have any effort if you're in the playoffs? Everyone who's made the playoffs, who's made the dance, all 14 teams are chasing that Lombardi. You mean to tell me that you weren't hungry enough to give a half decent effort? So why did you even make the playoffs to begin with? Somebody else that was hungrier, that may have had 2 or 3 more losses, could have got in and taken that spot. So it was effort, and as watching professionals play, you can't have that happen. You just can't have that happen at all.
Yeah, and go back to what Matt said. That changing the defensive coordinator, I think, was an asinine move back then. It proved to be that way. The defense only got worse. I know the players didn't like it too much during that whole process. So just a bunch of things going on. Jeffrey Lurie, in the past, stuck with Andy Reid for a while. Let him finish it out. But some other guys, Chip Kelly, quick. Doug Peterson, Super Bowl champion in 2017, 2018. He was gone quick. So it depends on, I guess, kind of the coach, the relationship he has. We'll see what happens with Jeffrey Lurie. But that takes the next question before we move on, guys, is who should the Eagles be targeting if they were to fire Sirianni? Who's one name maybe you guys would go after or you think would be a good fit? It's Belichick's name's been thrown around to some different teams. He supposedly wants to go to a team that's not great and kind of, I guess, to turn it into a winner, some young talent, which is kind of a weird situation. I don't know why he's going that way. But Jeffrey Lurie was noted, wanted to buy the Patriots before he bought the Eagles. Didn't get the Patriots, then got the Eagles. He's known to be a Belichick guy. He does like him. Do you think that's a chance there, or what other coach would you guys go with?
Belichick's going to the Falcons, so that's not a chance.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it's going to go that way.
Atlanta, for sure. I'm gonna say a name that hasn't been tossed around in a while. Where's Jim Caldwell? Has anyone contacted him yet?
No,
I think he's a coach. I think he's a coach that has the blend of old school, new school that could bridge the gap with that team. But I will also probably go after, hate to say it, but my coaching staff in Baltimore is about to be pilfered very soon. So
yeah, what the Eagles went through last year.
So Mike McDonald or even Todd Monken.
Monken's been interviewing, yeah,
he's getting some interviews now too. So, but now if we want to make a splash, I think you kick the tires on Pete Carroll
I don't hate that.
because he wants to coach still.
Yeah, he does. And again, pushed out by Seattle. I think that was a bad move. We'll see. I think if he wants to coach, he'll keep it up somewhere else. Me personally, Matt, I'm leaning towards, again, Sirianni was supposed to be an offensive guy, but didn't even call his own plays. It was supposed to be his offense. He determined whether it be a run or pass, and then Brian Johnson was supposed to work off of that. A tough situation, a tough scenario for both guys to try to run an offense that way. But if they were to get rid of Sirianni, one guy that really stands out to me who's taken some interviews would be Bobby Slowick from Houston. The offensive coordinator for the Texans comes from that Shanahan tree. I really love what he's done. I'm a big fan of his, as I was of Mike McDaniel before he got that job with Miami. I think him or a Ben Johnson from Detroit, I think one of these innovative offensive minds should be the way to go. I know they need help on defense, and I think the right defensive coordinator could be the move there. But I'm going after one of those offensive guys if Sirianni gets let go. So my top two would be Ben Johnson from Detroit and then Bobby Slowick from Houston. Matt, what do you think?
I don't hate those. I mean, I think the problem, I listened to an interesting podcast. It had Javon Hargrave on there. And as we know, Hargrave was a great asset for the Eagles the year before. He's now with the 49ers. And it was interesting just listening to him talk about the differences between the franchises. He was talking about how intense and how ratcheted the practices are with 49ers, and that they kind of they treat practice full guns blazing, like they don't really worry about injuries, and that it was really intense. And he was kind of taken back by that. And I think he said something else too that, and again, I don't think he intended any of this to be shade. I think he was just talking. One of the interviews he was with Eric Armstead, who'll be playing this week. And then the other interview he was with, I want to say it was just a separate podcast, but he talked about that being around Kyle and for just 20 minutes, he learned more about the offense and how it should flow in the NFL than he did his whole year with the Eagles, the past couple years with the Eagles. I think those are very interesting comments, and I think they're telling comments. And I think listening to Seth Joyner, listening to just regular Eagle fans, the thing that Eagle fans have hung their hat on more than anything isn't just these offensive plays. It's the defense. And the defense has been uninspired. There's a level of toughness that is gone. The pride is gone. I mean, Hassan Reddick is laughing literally in frustration by the pass coverage that they're putting him in. That he doesn't get a chance to really explore and exploit what he does best, which is to hunt the QB. I mean, it's just so many problems with the Eagles right now, from a mindset issue, from a culture issue. I just think they need somebody, I know people don't love this guy, but Mike Vrabel. They need somebody who comes in there with some authority, who's going to have an accountability and demand a certain level of professionalism. Because right now, I mean, just listening to those little comments from Hargrave, just listening to Eagle fans that I come across, the number one problem they all have is that there's the defense ain't the defense that they like to see. And I think at the end of the day, the Philadelphia is a city where offense is secondary. And I know people don't like to hear that, but the one thing they like is they like to have a strong defense, and they don't feel that this defense has any bit of the ability to stop anything. And I think that's going to be a problem for the Eagles.
They really don't. And I can speak to this because we went through this in Baltimore a few years back with the transition of the defense, having to deal with salary cap issues from the Flacco deal for about 4 or 5 years, and then rebuilding through the draft, then finally able to add free agents here and there and getting some steals. So, yes, Philadelphia is a defensive team. It's a blue-collar, lunch pail type of city. And when you don't play with passion and aggression on both sides of the ball, it shows. Philadelphia is not a soft city, and the Eagles normally aren't a soft team. So you're going to have to get the culture changed. And it's funny how we're talking about the word culture this late in the season. Like, culture should have been established during training camp and should have been built upon throughout the year. So if we're talking about culture in January, that's a big problem. But hypothetically, let's say if you keep Sirianni as the head coach, do you bring back Frank Reich to run the offense and maybe hire someone like a Wink Martindale to run the defense? I mean, there's different scenarios like that as well, too. So
Wink Martindale.
Well,
Love Wink
so
Martindale. I don't know about Frank Reich anymore, but yeah, I love Wink Martindale. I like that.
see, now his thing, Frank Reich as a coordinator is great. Head coach, different story. But if he just has to do one
That's
thing and
true,
one thing
too.
only, if he has to do one thing and one thing only, he's that. And when you won the Super Bowl, he was your OC. So I mean, you have to you might have to kick tires on that too. If you're trying to keep Sirianni, I think if you keep Sirianni, you have to bring somebody that's familiar with the team to come in. If you don't keep him, you gotta change everything.
Yep.
A lot of question marks. For sure. Heading into next year for the Philadelphia Eagles, and we saw it. On defense, they chose to sign Bradbury over Gardner Johnson, who made his was with the Lions in that playoff win. And I'll tell you, I've never seen somebody decline like I've seen Bradbury. Because last year he was a very good player. I don't care what you say. If you watch it, he was a good player last year.
Then.
He wasn't. He was not. I think he was either All Pro or Pro Bowler last year.
There's a reason why the Giants gave up on him. He's been doo-doo, sir. He's doo-doo.
The Giants didn't want to pay him any money because they were already buns and they couldn't get any better, so he didn't do them any good.
How they chose
We'll see what happens. Say it again, Matt.
How they chose Bradbury over Gardner Johnson to me is insane. But
that one hurt back then. You see, I got my Florida Gator helmet over here. CJGJ Florida Gator. I thought for sure he would be back. He was kind of the heart and soul of that defense. He was that toughness that Matt was alluding to earlier. That was gone. They lost a lot of guys on defense. They lost their defensive coordinator halfway or 3/4 of the way through the season. Again, as Jason mentioned, that culture was thought to have been set last year, and through that season, 10-1. That was supposed to be, something they didn't have to worry about. Turns out that's an issue, and there are going to be some big question marks coming up. And we all know, again, once you pay the quarterback, things get a lot tougher. We'll see what they do in the offseason. Again, and I go back to the draft, and you always see like somebody look at the Bills, and they got you guys like Khalil Shakir. I was going through yesterday just looking at top 3 receivers around the league. I mean, and it's just insane that the Eagles can't get a third receiver that's productive in any way, shape, or form. I know they got 2 really good ones, but there's such a substantial drop-off in that receiving core. To not be able to draft a receiver that's decent in the middle rounds from 3 to 7 in the last 5 to 7 to 10 years, they just can't find anybody to put out there. I think that's a little bit wild, so we'll see how it progresses. There are going to have to be some changes in the offseason, and we'll see which way they decide to go as an organization. But a very, very big collapse.
Just to pour salt in the wound, Puka Nacua broke all the rookie receiving records. He's a 5th-round draft pick.
Yeah. And not only do they not hit, they can't get one that's playable, even playable.
And let me just say this. I think this is the one thing people have to understand. Culture doesn't matter when you're winning. Culture matters when you're losing, because that's what puts you back on track. So at the end of the day, when people people can talk about, it feels good, we're winning, we're doing great. Yeah, of course. No one's going to talk about each other. Everybody's going to get along because we're winning. Culture is what puts you back on track when the chips are down, when you've lost 3 straight to Minnesota, when you're struggling with your quarterback making bad turnovers. That's when culture matters. Culture doesn't matter when you're winning, because everybody loves each other when you're winning. It's about when you're in that foxhole and you've lost and it's not looking good. It's about you having the veteran leadership and having the coaching leadership and the organizational leadership to say, hey, guys, this is our standard and we're not matching it. And I think that's going to lead us to a direct problem with the Dallas Cowboys. I think that's one of the problems with the Dallas Cowboys. They have the same problem. No, the culture there doesn't seem to happen for them.
And Shannon Sharp said something before we go to the next, but it can lead into the next game. Shannon Sharp said something today that made a lot of sense. He was saying it all season long, but he was saying that we've all seen the Eagles' problems on both sides of the ball all season, but you weren't correcting them because you were winning, but you were accepting things while you were winning that you would never accept in a loss. So why weren't you correcting those same things even though you were winning? And that was telling as well. So we didn't correct everything either way because you had a winning record, but it should have been hit head on, and we'd have probably a different outcome right now.
Yep.
And I do think having a healthy Jalen Hurts next year, I mean, we saw in the beginning of this year through the first 10 whatever games, he just looked like a different player. Hopefully he can get healthy for the start of next season. But a lot of other question marks that are be going around to see how they do. So we'll see if they make a coaching switch. Of course, it will probably most likely be by next week when we all have our show for next week. So we'll be able to talk about that probably going forward. But as of right now, McCarthy's still in Dallas and Sirianni still in Philadelphia. So the Bucs get that win, 32-9. We've talked enough about that here so far. Let's talk about some of the teams that are still going as we do a quick recap. Other game yesterday, the Bills and the Steelers. Bills home favorites. The game got moved due to the weather. Bills take care of business there, 31-17. Thought they looked good in that one. Going back now to Saturday night or Sunday, excuse me. That was when we had the Packers and the Cowboys, as Jason called it that day. I don't think any of us saw it going that direction, but the Packers just beating down Dallas in Jerry World, their first loss in Dallas all season long. The Packers looked fantastic in that one. We talked about Jordan Love and how good he's looked. 32 touchdown passes, second most in the NFL this season, right behind Dak Prescott, but looked a lot better than Dak Prescott in that game in Dallas on Sunday. The Sunday night game was, I told you, to be a good one. It was one of my favorite ones for sure. The Lions and the Rams, a 1-point victory for Detroit in the Jared Goff versus Matthew Stafford Bowl there. Stafford coming back to Detroit. Goff, though, gets the win with the Lions. You love to see that, or at least I did there. And Jared Goff now has more playoff victories in Detroit than Matthew Stafford. So Jared Goff doing big things there. The Lions advance. And then Saturday, the Texans stunned the Browns in Cleveland. The Browns favorites there, Bobby Slowick, and of course C.J. Stroud torched them. Nico Collins with a huge game, 45-14, blowout city for Houston. And then the Chiefs able to just kind of suffocate the Dolphins on Saturday night, 26-7, a fourth coldest game in NFL history. The Dolphins did not come to play in that one. That Miami team was not ready at all. Tua looked as we kind of thought he would in the cold. Now drops to 0-5 in games below 30 degrees. He looked like he didn't want to be there at all. I've never seen him look that bad, and I think Miami might have to go in a different direction if they want to improve, but they're said to be in talks with Tua for an extension. So we'll see how that goes and if he becomes the answer going forward. So now we're going to get to our divisional rounds. We'll preview some of those. But while we're on the topic of Miami, I want to get a quick answer from both of you on this one. If you saw Tua on Saturday, what did you think? And I thought he looked putrid. And do you think he'd be the answer for Miami going forward? The rest of that offense is good. The defense, once they get back healthy, is good with Vic Fangio. But Tua's the big question mark. They loved him this year. He had great stats. I mean, his stats on paper you can't argue with. But every time this is his first playoff start, and he looked pretty bad, Jason. Do you think Tua, though, is the answer? Should Miami try to sign him to that extension?
They should, because at the end of the day, you're not going to find too many players who can put up those kind of numbers within that offense. And Tua's slights, I believe, can possibly still be corrected. You don't throw away a number one draft pick that quickly with the skill set that he has, the numbers that he has put up. Because you bring somebody else in there, you run the risk of them having to learn the entire offense and that taking half the season to do, and then the rapport with the receivers and things of that nature. I think the Dolphins' loss to the Bills was more on the elements and the defense with all those people that were hurt. I don't think it was solely on Tua's shoulders.
If you got a quarterback, though, that can't play in the, once it gets into February and January and playoff football, it's going to be cold. You might get some cold games. Tua looked, and again, if you watched it, it was hard to watch how bad he looked in that game. I know Kansas City's defense is good. I know they're on the road, but man, I don't know, Matt. What do you think? Is he the answer in Miami?
I agree with Jason. I think you have to resign him just because of the lack of successful quarterbacks that are out there. But I'll say this: I don't think he's ever going to reach the height of the hype that there was for him coming out of the draft. I look at him as a guy that might be able to have a career like Jared Goff, or like maybe he settles down a little bit and is able to, have some really productive career. Thing about Tua is this: I don't know if it's him. I don't know if it's the weapons. I don't know what it is. But to me, the problem with Tua has always been when I watch him play, I don't see a guy that I think is a generational talent. I don't see a guy that I think is an elite talent. I see a guy who can throw the ball. I see a guy who has certain skills that make him very good. But I mean, at the same time, we can say that about a lot of guys in this league. We can say that about Derek Carr. We can say that about Baker Mayfield. We can say this about a couple of guys in this league. And it's not to me that I'm not saying that Tua sucks. I just think that at the end of the day, Tua, whether we like it or not, has limitations. And I think he's going to be 26 next year. Like, I don't know how much more room of growth he has to develop into the guy that people were having like the Tua sweepstakes when he went into the draft, thinking like he was the end all be all for that draft at that position. I don't know if he's ever going to match that, but I agree with Jason. I think you have to pay him. I think you have to keep him, and I think you have to see what you got with him. But at the end of the day, I don't know how much I believe in Tua. Just to be frank with you, I just think he's a guy that has certain skills, but I don't know if he has the skill to take them to the next level. I think they got the talent to go to the next level, but they just need other pieces at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's tough to move on from a quarterback like that. I know he's been there for some time, but we remember what his stats were and what he looked like before Mike McDaniel got there. And it was brutal. It was kind of like what we saw on Saturday, but over a season-long period of time. I know he's able to stay healthy. That was better this year. I think if they were to get somebody else in that offense than Mike McDaniel, I don't think we would see that big of a difference with those weapons. I think they might even be better off depending on who it is. But we'll see what they decide to do. Again, once you pay that quarterback, things get a lot tougher. So you better make sure that that's the guy you want to pay. Because if not, you could be in big trouble here down the line. So we'll see what they decide to do. They're engaged in say it again.
Couldn't we say that with Jared Goff when he was in St. Louis and before their coach got there? He didn't look great. And then that coach got there, and then you had Todd Gurley who kind of helped him out. And they made that trade to get Stafford, and now it looks like it's one of the rare deals that looks like it did well for both organizations.
And honestly, with that Stafford and Goff trade, I still think Goff probably won the Super Bowl with that same team that season too. I don't think it was that much of a difference for that season only. For that season only, I think the defense was so stacked for that season only that anybody could have thrown and been throwing a quarterback for that team that year. So, I mean, and he took them to one prior. So it's not like he didn't take the Super Bowl before.
Yeah, definitely. If I had to choose between the two, I'd take Jared Goff. If I had to choose between Goff and Tua going for. I know that's just a random thought, but that's just where I'm going there. And now let's dive kind of into what we've got coming up this week in the divisional round. Guys, both of your teams will be in action. San Francisco and Baltimore, both top seeds in their respective conferences. And Jason, will start with the Baltimore Ravens coming off a bye week there, the number one seed in the AFC. They're going to kick off things on Saturday at 4:30 p.m., where they kind of get one of the hotter teams, it seems like. Rookie head coach D'Amico Ryans, C.J. Stroud put on a clinic against the number one passing defense in the league in Cleveland on the road last week. They put up 45. Looked unbelievable in that game, though the Ravens defense said, it will be better, maybe one of the best in the league. How do you see your Ravens do it this one? They're big favorites. They're 9-point favorites in this game. Just give me your questions, concerns, if you have any at all, for your Ravens against Houston.
I see this game being closer than what the spread says. The spread was 13, like 16 points. At the beginning of the season, we played in the first game of the year, and they closed that gap too. One thing about it, the Houston Texans, led by Coach Ryans, who should be the coach of the year.
Should be. Say it again. Say it again for everybody out there. Coach of the year.
D'Amico Ryans is the coach of the year. And C.J. Stroud is the rookie of the year. There's nothing else that should happen besides those two things. But I think because the Texans play for a full 60 minutes and they play hard for a full 60 minutes, I believe the Ravens will still come out with the victory, but it's going to be a lot closer than people think. And if it does become a blowout from the Ravens side, it'll be from a defense leading the charge, honestly. But I like what I see right now from the Ravens. Defense is playing an all-time high. They're not the 2000 defense, but they're like neck and neck with the 2000 defense.
Wow, that's impressive, to be mentioned like that.
This defense is better than the 2012 team that won the Super Bowl. You can say that right now, just what they've done on the field so far coming into the playoffs. They are better than the 2012 defense. Let's just be honest. Roquan is playing like a young Ray. Kyle Hamilton's playing like a young Ed Reed, and you got Pat Queen flying around the ball. You got Geno Stone, who went from obscurity to leading the league in interceptions almost this season. The defense is rolling. Then the offense. The offense is the key. Similar to Philadelphia, Baltimore is not an offensive team in history. It's a defensive-led team, and the offense just has to score a few points to put the defense ahead. But now you have a team where either the offense can put you up or the defense can bring you back. Baltimore Ravens have never had that much balance on both sides of the ball in its entirety of its existence. So this is like we're playing with house money, but you still have to play the games. You can't count them on paper. But I do believe that we're due for an offensive explosion from this team. And then when you bring back Mark Andrews, who's been practicing the last 2 weeks, he should clear everything to practice. To play. And then when you add a Dalvin Cook, we're not looking for Minnesota Dalvin Cook all the way. That would be great, but that would be unfair at the same time. We're not looking for that. We are looking for what we lost in Keaton Mitchell, which is someone who can catch out the backfield and make people miss. And that's what Dalvin Cook can still do, catching the ball out the backfield. Hitting the hole, I don't know. But catching the ball out the backfield, open space, he still has that. So that's why he was signed. And that's the element that we were missing on the offense. But now you have three tight ends. You have Mark Andrews, you have Kohler, and you have Likely. And Likely is really a number one at this point now. He's proven that.
It's like a slot receiver.
Yeah, he's a slot receiver. So, so you have Zay Flowers, who can pretty much run the entire route tree. You have Odell, who's coaching everybody up, and he can still get off for a few plays here and there. And that's all you really need. Then you have the running back. You have Gus Edwards, who's a beast. I'm glad we kept him. And then you have, Action Jackson running for his second MVP, but he's learned from 2019. He's going to come out hungry on Saturday for sure.
Again, that's always been their big question mark, is Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. So kind of a big game for them at home against the Houston Texans. Again, I think they could get the victory. Just to go back, you talked about Kyle Hamilton. Could have been an Eagle, but they decided to take Jordan Davis and that first pick right ahead of him in that draft. They took two big defensive linemen and didn't get the quarterback or stop the run yesterday. So hopefully that improves for the Eagles going forward with some of those draft picks. But let me ask you this, Jason. Team total set for the Ravens at 27.5. Do they put up 28 in that game?
I think to win against Houston, you have to. The one thing Houston can do, they've proven throughout the year, Houston can put up points and quickly. So you have to stop them or you're going to be in a shootout. But yeah, 28 is definitely going to be above 27.5 for sure.
All right, Matt, before we get to your San Francisco 49ers, top seed also coming off a week of rest. How do you feel about the Texans and the Ravens? You give C.J. Stroud and that crew in Houston any chance to pull off another upset here against the AFC North, this time in the East Coast here against Baltimore?
I mean, listen, Stroud is quality QB. I mean, I think we talked about it before on the show. I think he's a top 10 QB. Listen, he could do it for sure, but he'd have to play flawless. And he'd need some other help from the Texans. I love the story just because of just where the Texans were as an organization last year. Just the rebuild that they've had to do since Deshaun Watson has left and T.J. Watt's retirement. So, listen, I'm loving the story. And, of course, their coach came from San Francisco as a defensive coordinator. So, listen, I'm all invested in the Texans, but I just think they – a lot of things to go right or to beat the Ravens. And that's no slight at the Texans or C.J. Stroud. I just think that at this point, with the team that they have, I just don't know if they have enough right now to take the Ravens. But I tell you what, the future is very bright, and I think the rest of the league got to watch because they're going to make some moves. They got a lot of cap space. And they got some guys that really know how to play on that team. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what DeMarco Ryans does with this team. I mean, it's amazing what the progress they've made.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun division, right, going forward. That was one we've kind of badmouthed the last few years. But now you got the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence down near this year, but Doug Peterson probably have them back, hopefully next year playing well. Then the Colts with Shane Steichen and now Anthony Richardson.
Will he have them back clicking again? Because Trevor Lawrence has been iffy the past two seasons when it comes to clutch games. Is that something that's another trend to continue?
So we'll see.
Well, is that
That's
a
gonna be funny
trend?
with those three quarterbacks, Richardson, Stroud, and Trevor Lawrence. And as we talked about earlier with Matt, this is CJ Stroud's rookie year. So you've now got 3 more years on top of it with him on that rookie contract you can build around.
Right.
That's such a big thing, especially when he's this good in this first year. I mean, that's a dream come true for Houston. So again, I think it's going to be a good game. I think the Ravens probably will come out on top, and I like the Texans getting the points if it's going to be up around 7.5, in between 7.5 and 9 as it stands right now. But that's going to be tough. Ravens, again, and the 49ers look like the teams, obviously, to me coming in. And that'll take us now to the 49ers, Matt. And an interesting situation, two guys that know each other very well, and Shanahan and Matt LaFleur come from that same coaching tree. Kind of the first season we're seeing Matt LaFleur's offense run. It's always been a mixture of what Aaron Rodgers likes to do and kind of what LaFleur likes to do. Now you get Jordan Love this year, and it's their first look at this Matt LaFleur offense. They've really started to click over the last 7 or 8 weeks of the season. Jordan Love has been the best quarterback in terms of EPA and other statistics the last 8 weeks, and we saw that on full display against the Dallas Cowboys at home, where that defense has been almost lights out all year long, a flawless. I mean, he torched them. People were running wide open. He made every throw he needed to make. I mean, he was phenomenal. What do you think they can do? The Niners, though, even in Vegas, they're 9.5 to 10-point favorites here over the Packers. Do you think the Packers can give the Niners a tough game this weekend? It's always the question with these games are, is the week off going to benefit or is it going to hurt you as that number 1 seed? And the same thing goes for the Ravens. How do you guys feel about that week off? Is it better for rest, or would you rather maybe play a game like the Texans and look really good and win 45-14 to come into this divisional round, Matt?
I mean, it's going to sound like an elitist point, but I think Jason's going to respectfully agree as well. Look, when you're a team that's been playing at a high level all year, for the most part, you need that added rest, and you have players that are a little older, they're not as young. So, yeah, like Trent Williams, we've got McCaffrey, Jason has other guys on his team. Like that added week, I think helps us more than it hurts us. As far as Green Bay, look, it's going to be a game regardless because at this point there's no real bad teams. I'm not going to lie. I'd rather play Tampa Bay for sure. No slight, Dennis. But I think that, Green Bay's got some stuff that can make it interesting. But let me just say this about Green Bay. This all happened because Jones was electric in that game against Dallas. There's one issue that I think people have to remember about the 49ers. They have a really good front line, and that front line is really good at disrupting the run. And then if you hit the second level, you have Greenlaw, you have Warner. They're really hard to run on. So at the end of the day, I do think we're going to see if Jordan Love has what it takes. Now, look, they got weapons. Dobbs is great. Reed is great. I think one of the most slept on guys is Musgrave. I really like him. I know everybody talks about Laporta, but I really like Musgrave. He can kick and play. So look, they're going to make the game interesting. I don't know if I go through this theory that I'm seeing that they're going to blow them out by 10 points. I don't know about that, but look, I think it's going to be a game. I think it's a game that we can win within 6 for sure. But look, I know at this point, you can't take any game half-heartedly. You got to go in. And I know Jason feels the same way about his Ravens with the Texans. At this point in the season, you got to take every game as serious as you can and go into that with the idea that they could beat you. So, yeah, I don't take any of these guys as a sleep or as a slight that, hey, we're going to take them serious regardless. I think you have to.
And Jason, the Packers, the first 7 seed in NFL history since it's been kind of instated a couple years ago to win a playoff game. The 7 seeds are kind of known for the last few years been blown out. So they get the winner with the Cowboys, the first 7 seed to get a victory. How do you feel about that rest factor with your team having the week off? And then how do you feel about the Packers and the Niners this weekend?
I would say the Ravens needed the rest. We had a lot of stars who were out the last 2 weeks of the season. The game we won and the game we lost against Steelers. So, yeah, Kyle Hamilton, who was banged up. Yeah, Marlon Humphrey was banged up. Of course, I talked about Mark Andrews earlier. Odell had a few dinks and bruises. Lamar could always use the rest as far as healing his body for the playoffs. But people have to remember, Ravens have made the playoffs the last couple of years, but Lamar hasn't been playing. He was hurt the last 2 years. Yes, his record is 1-3, but he hasn't played in the playoff game since 2021. So, I mean, we're healthy. This is the healthiest Ravens team since the 2019 season, with all the starters being healthy. So I don't think the rest will be a factor as far as rust, if you will. And then you have a player like Odell, who's been on a Super Bowl winning team, knows how to get people over the hurdle, over the hump of, say, a rest, or know what it takes to get to the promised land. So I think, and then you have people like Roquan Smith, who's going to refuse to lose at all costs. And you have a bunch of different veterans in that locker room who are strong veterans who have a presence. So I think that the feelings of 2019 will not happen this year with Baltimore. But you cannot take the Texans lightly at all. As I said, we didn't take them lightly from week one. We saw what C.J. Stroud looked like the first game of the season, and he's just built upon that throughout the year. So we knew he was the real deal from day one, game one. So that's not really a thing that we're underestimating. However, Matt, I will say this. I love y'all dearly. I want us to be in the Super Bowl against each other. But this is the one game that scares me the most out of this weekend's games. And you alluded to it yourself, saying you'd rather play a different team other than Green Bay. Not because you don't think you can beat them, but because of what they present. Let's just be honest. Since week 11, week 12, Jordan Love has been the best quarterback in all of football. 18 touchdowns, 1 interception since like week 12. He's playing out of his mind, and they're hot right now. Like, they're literally fish grease hot right now. So if there is a potential for an upset, I look at Jordan Love and the Packers. I'm going to flip it. You remember, you're going to think about what I'm going to say when I finish this statement. I look at Jordan Love possibly doing to the Niners what Kaepernick did to Green Bay when y'all went on that run.
Right.
I see that. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Me too.
I want that rematch. I really want that rematch. Hope I'm wrong. I want the rematch. But my brain is telling me I see a type of scenario right now from this game.
Oh, for sure. Listen, if we don't get pressure on Jordan Love, I mean, that's
going to throw it everywhere. Yeah.
Bosa, Young, and Hargrave and Armstead, they're going to have to bring it in this game. They're going to have to make Jordan Love hurry up in his progressions. They're going to have to really rush it. If you give Jordan Love, with the way he's played, if he goes into any scenario where he has advanced time to make his moves, yeah, it's going to be a long night. And I'm just with you. Trust me. I'm the most realistic San Francisco fan there is. I would much rather play another team, of course. So look, I'm with you. I like I said, we're not going to take them lightly. I have all the respect for Green Bay, but at the end of the day, I mean, look, this is why we made the moves we made, and you know, I think we can all talk about this on some level. We all make moves. Dalvin Cook signing, other players that people have brought in. Shaq Leonard. I mean, granted, it didn't work out for Eagles as much, but we all, Kevin Byard. There's moves that the teams make when they think they're in a position to make a run. And I said this, a couple years ago. My son came to me. He said, "Hey, you guys got Christian McCaffrey. I know you're excited." And I said, "Well, what we get? What we give to get Christian McCaffrey?" And he said, "Well, why aren't you excited?" And I said, "Well, if we don't get a title, we've given up a lot." So, and the Trent Williams time is ticking. Like, we've got other things that we're going to have to do. So, like, if this is it's Super Bowl or bust for us. So if we don't get there, yeah, like it's look, it's a bad year for us, and so we're not happy with a division title or a conference title. Like, we want the bowl. That's what we're there for. I know I speak for you the same way with your squad. Like, we're not in about getting these silver trophies. We want the gold. If it's not the gold, we don't want it. So at the end of the day, respect to all the teams that are remaining in here. And that's why I said, if we don't take them serious, we deserve to lose. Period.
Yeah, I think this one's going to be a real fun one. Again, Niners, 9.5, 7, 9.5 point favorites. It's looking like right now at home against the red-hot Green Bay Packers. So that's going to be a good one. But I think we have a lot of great games this weekend. That takes us now to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Are going to travel up to Detroit to take on the Lions, who get another home game thanks to the Cowboys dropping that one to the Packers in Dallas. Lions 24-23 over the Rams. Emotional win in Detroit. A big win for them. Can they carry that momentum to another home game? Again, they get not the Eagles or any other teams. They get Tampa Bay, who's been playing pretty well as of late. They won 6 of 7 games. Baker looked good yesterday. The defense has been good as of late in recent weeks. Can they give the Lions a game? I know Dennis is going to be amped up for this one. Matt, we'll start with you here. What do you think about the Lions and the Bucs? Lions 6.5-point favorites. Big win for them. Can the Bucs give them a run here?
First of all, to my Detroit family, what up, though? They, Detroit. I love seeing this. I mean, as a kid growing up, Herman Moore, Barry Sanders, the lefty Scott Mitchell. I mean, look, I love seeing that the Detroitans are finally in a position where they're providing their fans quality football, and they're really have a serious chance to make some noise. So I love it. That's number one. Let me just say that. And then number two, let me say this. This ain't a cakewalk for them either. Baker Mayfield, as much as I've talked trash about him throughout his career, I got to give it up to the kid. I mean, he's going in with a prove-it deal with Tampa Bay. He's going to probably flip that $4 million deal that they gave him. He's probably going to get a $30 million plus deal after this season. I don't see how he doesn't. He's done really well. And if they didn't make as many drops as they made against the Eagles, that game against the Eagles could have been even uglier. And that's the crazy thing. Like the score, even though the score was bad, the score could have got even nastier if some of those drops didn't happen. I think they had about, I want to say 6 drops I saw. If they didn't have those 6 drops, man, that game could have been even. So, and shout out to the untapped weapon so everybody's going to talk about Godwin. Everybody's going to talk about Mike Evans, as they should. But my man, C. Otten, who I call Cotton, that boy is a problem. He got game, man. He got game.
Oh,
you know what I mean? That boy Cotton, man. He got game, bro. So I like that kid. I like that kid in fantasy. He was a great pick. If you needed a guy on a bye week, he could sneak in some points for you. So look, he's shown himself against the Eagles. He's a guy that Baker Mayfield can exploit against Detroit. Because I'm telling you right now, with Mike Evans, who, look, all he does is catch touchdowns, and Godwin, who I think is the best complete wideout in that team, my man C. Otten, Detroit got to watch out for him because he's sneaky. He can get you.
Yeah, this is another good one. Both teams are red hot. Jason, you had the Lions over the Rams on Sunday. They hold on. They get the victory. This is what they dreamed of. They wanted a playoff game at Ford Field. They get one. Now they got 2 with a chance to win this one and go to the NFC Championship game. That place was electric on Sunday. What do you think? How do you see this one going?
The buck stops here. I think Tampa Bay beats Detroit.
Whoa, wait! The buck stops here. Or the buck keeps going. Which one?
But the buck keeps going. The Buck's going to fire the cannons again. I think they're going to be lion tamers.
I don't think Jason's picked on this entire playoff, but this is going to be a bold one here.
I think Lions will be tamed. I think Baker takes them to the NFC Championship game.
That would be incredible, I think. Yeah. I mean, wow. Can you imagine us sitting up here bad mouthing the NFC South week in and week out, just hoping that whoever wins that division can get above 500? And here's Baker Mayfield coming, here winning 6 of 7 games and taking Tampa maybe to the NFC Championship.
And I'll tell you why I think Tampa Bay will win the game. Their defense is actually very underrated. This is what it is. It's a defense for me. Shout out to number 7, Shaq Barrett, Baltimore City College, City Forever. Fellow alum of my high school. But the entire defense is unsung this year for that team. They've kept them in games where they should have been blown out and given Baker and those boys a chance to come back and win a few of those games that they won throughout the year. And like Matt said, it's everyone else not named Mike Evans as keeping his offense going right now. and Mike Evans is still the number one target. So I just think that it's Baker mania all over again, man. This is like Oklahoma Baker. Like, he's going to plant the flag and do everything else. I really think that Tampa Bay pulls his upset off.
Wow, that would be something. Again, not out of the question.
Can we give some love to Todd Bowles? I mean, that dude.
Yes.
Look, he is coaching, man.
I had my doubts. I really did. Again, he's always been a great defensive coach. I thought him being the head coach after what they went through last year, up and down. I mean, they've really, really tightened things up here the last 7 weeks. They've been really good. Dennis knows that better than anybody. Offensively and defensively, they've gotten better. I think we got to give some love to Rachaad White, too, the second-year running back. Love what he's been able to do this year in that Tampa Bay offense. He's a great out of the backfield, can catch the ball. He's been good.
And I mean, also, go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just going to say this real quick. I think the one thing that Detroit's going to struggle with is Todd Bowles is a very aggressive, mean-spirited defensive guy. He's going to come in on Jared Goff on every play and dare him to beat him. He's going to bring pressure.
And that's what you need to do. I don't understand why the Rams didn't do that more. I know they trusted their front four, Aaron Donald. They were doubling and tripling Aaron Donald, and they couldn't get pressure on Jared Goff. I'm with you, man. That's the only way, I think, to disrupt the Lions. And I know you take some guys out of coverage on the back end, but you have to put pressure on Jared Goff if you want to beat Detroit. I'm with you.
I'll play this. The Bucs can put pressure on Detroit like Baltimore did. And when you put pressure on Jared Goff, the ball goes everywhere but the ball goes everywhere but to his receivers.
That's a fact.
Like, the timing's off. He gets flustered. And I know we talked about Baker Mayfield's legs. They didn't talk about it last night on the game, but
he ran wild last night, man.
But Baker's been moving around and throwing the ball on the run a lot better, but also just getting yards where he needs to get yards. Like, and that's but so is Jared Goff. But Baker has really settled in, and Baker's problem has always been going for the home run too early. He's not doing it this year. And truth be told, he wasn't doing that last year when he was a fill-in for Stafford in LA with the Rams. He just couldn't play there because they were going to bring back Stafford next season regardless. And I think Carolina is kicking their tails for not keeping him on the roster for this season. Clearly was doing right now. So I think this is a testament to, like Matt said, Mr. Progressive, snapshot. He's doing all right this year, man. So keep on going.
And I was gonna say, I thought he kind of got a raw deal in Cleveland. He got them their first playoff win in how many years? That great year when he was healthy, they beat that Steelers in that first round. That next year in Cleveland, he was banged up, ribs, ankle, etc. That shoulder was really tight. He tore his shoulder that year. He didn't have a great year, but he was not healthy the entire season. They move on from him quickly. Now you're seeing him finally fully healthy here in Tampa with that offense. They've got weapons, a good offensive line, a good running back, and they look pretty good. So that's going to be another one where I think it might not maybe go as everybody thought. I think it's going to be a good game. I'm going to go with Detroit to win in a close one by 3 at home, though, against Tampa in that one. Dennis, how do you feel about that one? Can you put like a graphic of what he thinks is going to happen or something like that? What do you think, Dennis? Do you have any audio power back there? No,
fire the cannons. There it is. Fire the cannons.
You know who I'm taking.
That is hype. He let me know after the show last week. He said, Nick, if the Eagles lose, he said, I'm not going to let you, live that one down. So I don't expect them too easily. And the Bucs, they look good, man. So they're going to bring that hotness into Detroit to face the hot Detroit line. Every team at this point, you could argue, is hot. So it's going to be a fun one. That takes us to the final one. I think could be maybe the best game of the weekend. And that is the Bills and the Chiefs, man. These two teams go at it almost every year. It seems like in the playoffs. Matt, you're a Pat Mahomes guy. They looked good in that win over the Dolphins. The offense seemed to kind of click a little bit there. Travis Kelce got back on track. Great crowd over there in that cold weather. But the Bills looked good in that win yesterday over the Pittsburgh Steelers. And now Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes again here in the playoffs. But this time it's going to be Patrick Mahomes' first ever road playoff game. He has never in his career played on the road in the playoffs. He's either been at Arrowhead or at a neutral site in the Super Bowl. How do you think your man fares here in his first ever road playoff game against the Bills in Buffalo with a spot in the AFC Championship on the line?
I'm going to tell you, he's going to come out and win. I know conventional science. Some people may say, hey, the Bills have been on a roll. They've played great. But I'll say this, with Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes, what they have been able to do this year, I am still dumbfounded on. They have somehow started to figure things out in the nick of time, no pun intended, where they have the rookie who's now playing better, Rice. He looks like might be the new Tyreek Hill for them. I'm not saying he is Tyreek Hill. I'm saying he's got the ability to make explosive plays. Kelsey has started to come out of his his lull that he had with Taylor Swift. Maybe he was whatever. I don't know.
He's a Swiftie.
Yeah. He's now starting to be
distracted.
What he's doing. I just think I really do, and I'm not trying to play favorites here because I think no matter who comes next, if things play out the way we think they're going to play out, I think the Ravens will beat whoever comes out of this. If the Ravens win their situation, that's who I have leaving that conference. I tell you, I really believe that Pat Mahomes is going to go in there. He's going to beat the Bills, and I'll say this, and no one else has talked about this. We do realize how hard of a journey the Buffalo Bills have had to do. They've almost had to play perfect for weeks at a time here. And I'm a firm believer that you can only be perfect for so long before things start to fall apart. And it's the reason why we see undefeated seasons rarely duplicated. It's the reason why we see teams that, they have these long winning streaks. There's a reason why they sometimes happen. My favorite is when we see in basketball where they'll say the guy has made 90 free throws in a row, and then bam, he misses that one free throw. It's hard to be perfect. And the way that the Buffalo Bills have had to play to make the playoffs, then proceed into the playoffs, and then have Josh Allen take on as much as he's taken on, at some point it's going to catch up. And I just think that the way that the Kansas City Chiefs operate, I think they got the pieces, and I think they got the mind to take apart some of what's going on in Buffalo. I just don't bet against Pat Mahomes. He's like Tom Brady. I'm not going to bet against him. I just think he's a guy that he can get it done. I think he's going to get it done against the Bills. I really do.
Yeah, Jason, I think this one could be the game of the weekend. I said last week it was the Rams and Lions, and that one was 24-23. I think we could see something similar here between the Bills and the Chiefs. It's always fun when Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes, go at it or go out against each other. His first round playoff game, and we talked about last week against the Dolphins, fourth coldest game in NFL history. We saw what it did to Tua. It looked as if Pat Mahomes didn't miss a step. He looked like he was playing in 70-degree weather, something that he had been accustomed to. How do you see this one going? I remember it was, 13 seconds they gave the Chiefs the ball back last time they met in the playoffs. Pat Mahomes let them down for a field goal with 13 seconds. They won the toss. They win it in overtime. That's what caused the rule change. The overtime rule change in the NFL was that game. How do you feel about this one?
I think they ain't done yet. I think that Buffalo remembers that. I think the front seven is playing hungry for Buffalo. And I think that Buffalo finally beats Kansas City.
I would like to see that, as you guys know, for the Buffalo Bills.
And I'll say this as well. If we're talking about matchups, right? Ravens, let's say they get past Houston. I think you'd rather play a Buffalo team than you would a Pat Mahomes-led KC team, because Pat Mahomes isn't going to make mistakes. But if you rough up Josh Allen a little bit, the ball's going to go in the air. There's going to be turnovers thrown.
It's true.
So I think,
and you could argue that Kansas City Andy Reid, maybe has the coaching advantage over McDermott. McDermott, a good coach, also.
So I do think that Buffalo has something to prove, but they won't get past the Ravens. Honestly, I don't see anybody getting past Baltimore in this AFC. But I think that because the game's in Buffalo, I think that changes the home field and And Matt, I know like how Shaq and Barkley say in the NBA, the others have to show up, and I'm not
Right.
sure if the others from Kansas City will show up on the road versus being at home in Arrowhead.
And we'll see how the weather is too.
I agree with that. I think there's one thing that's different in this matchup that probably is different than any other matchup they've had, and that is this defense.
Yeah.
Statistically, they're the number 2 defense in the league. I just think it's a little different, Kansas City. And let's not forget, too, there's one guy. We're talking about Mahomes. We're talking about Kelsey. We're talking about Shaheed Rice. But there's one guy that we haven't talked about, and he's healthy, and he is running hard. He's a hard runner, and that's Pacheco. And when he gets going, he puts a lot of pressure. So I just think there's things that the Kansas City Chiefs have done historically, and then there's things that they haven't done historically that Buffalo has not come across. And I don't think Buffalo's come across a defense like that the Kansas City's had this year. Let's be honest. Let's really be honest here. We all can be honest here. Kansas City's in the playoffs because of their defense, not because of their offense. We've never been able to say that. So this is a different game. And the scary part about Kansas City in this is, if Kansas City is starting to figure out how to make plays offensively, they already got the defense. It could get real bad real quick if Buffalo doesn't play under control, and if Josh Allen doesn't become the old Josh Allen, where he starts throwing interceptions, he starts making bad decisions. Because if that happens, this time Kansas City has a defense that can make him really pay if he does those things. And that's the only thing that I think is different in this matchup. Normally, I agree with you guys. There's a lot there that I think Kansas City's in jeopardy of losing to Buffalo. It wouldn't shock me. Let me just put this on record. Wouldn't shock me if Buffalo does win, but I'm just telling you, I just think that this is a different animal for Josh Allen. I think he's used to going in there and thinking it's a gunslinging battle, and normally in a gunslinging battle where you're going against a top 15 historically, yeah, you can have some success. This time, that defense is a top 5 defense. I just think it's a little different fight. That's all.
But I'll say the difference in Josh Allen the last 6 weeks of the season and previous seasons, Josh Allen, is he's not force feeding Diggs, and that's the big difference right now. He's not force feeding Diggs, and the offense is flowing, and they're using James Cook in the running game.
And I was going to say, Jason, you let me know that. I was going to take you to that, because that's the one thing that you've talked about over the last year or so was their inability to have that run game. Since they brought in Joe Brady's been there since he took over the play calling duties as the offensive coordinator. No Ken Dorsey any longer there in Buffalo. You've seen Josh Allen go under center. You've seen them hand the ball off and run power, et cetera, with James Cook, and it's paid off. I think that's been a huge difference for them towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and like I said, he's not force feeding the ball to Diggs 15 times a game. He's spreading the ball around, and I don't know anybody who had a perfect ticket betting on that game the other day with the Steelers, because he was throwing the ball to Kincaid and Knox and everybody. Nobody had those people on their anytime touchdown scorers last week. If they did, they made a lot of money for sure.
And again, just to go back and talk a little bit about what you said earlier about Buffalo, just in terms of turnovers, et cetera. And when the playoffs, that's what it's all about, right? Turnover battle. If you win the turnover battle in a playoff game, you most likely are going to win the game. That's what the coaches are telling their players before they take the field in situations like this. And Josh Allen, he turned the ball over a few times, and the Buffalo would have turned the ball over a few more times with some of those calls. I'm not going to lie. They got away with some calls in that game against the Steelers yesterday. But again, if Josh Allen takes care of the football, that's going to be the name of the game. So will he not? That might be the deciding factor. And I'm sure that's not a secret. Everybody knows that. So we'll see how he is able to do. I do think playing at home for the first time against Mahomes could be big there. But again, this is going to be a toss-up game. I'm going to stick with Buffalo. That's who I got. But as Matt said, it wouldn't shock me if the Chiefs won. I think this is going to be the best game of the weekend. So with that being said, Dennis, as we close out here on a Tuesday, if you want to throw up maybe your question of the evening, if we haven't hit it already. We've been having some great conversations today. So if it's any different, you can throw it up there. We'll end with what's on our minds here as we close out on a Tuesday. So here we go. Aha. So we talked about this a little bit. We talked about Sirianni and Mike McCarthy here. So let's kind of loop back over and focus on this before we head out. Well, who do you think deserves to be fired more? We'll start there, and then who would you replace him with? We talked a little bit about the Eagles, but now we can focus on the Cowboys as well. Monumental collapse in Big D. Matt, how do you feel about that? Sirianni or McCarthy? Who would you think deserves to get fired more, or maybe both?
I think both deserve to be fired, but I'll be honest with you. I think Nick Sirianni is number one on my list, and I'll explain why. As a historian, I like to look into things, and how monumental was this collapse? Well, you have to look at the 1964 Philadelphia Phillies in Pennsylvania history of sports to define a more deflating season than what's transpired with the Eagles. I mean, they were like, I think the 1964 Phillies were like 6.5 games in the lead with like I think it was like 2 weeks left in the season, and they lost it. This is about this bad. I mean, as much as, and look, I give Sirianni credit, I give the Eagles credit, the franchise. They did everything that you could do. They went to the Super Bowl. They lost, but they went there. They won a conference championship. They came back the following year. They were supposed to go right back into it. They were favorites. Everybody had them favorites in being in the Super Bowl. He didn't make it. And I think a lot of it's on him. As far as McCarthy, look, McCarthy's been a guy that we all scratch our heads and we're trying to figure out how he continues to trick people into being a head coach. For some reason he does. And I don't know how, but look, I'll be honest. The difference I have with the Eagles and the Cowboys is never did I believe the Cowboys were a Super Bowl favorite. I firmly believe that the Eagles were among the Super Bowl favorites in the season. So for me, I just think that's the difference. If we're cutting, the lemons and we're saying like who's the biggest lemon, to me that's why it's Nick Sirianni, because everybody I don't know anybody that didn't have the Philadelphia Eagles as the number one Super Bowl contending team. Not it wasn't, and people would like to have revisionist history. It wasn't San Francisco. It wasn't Baltimore. We weren't picked. It was the Philadelphia Eagles. Everybody said they're next. And to lose and to have that much clout going into season, to then go into the season and have that big of a win that you have. I mean, dude, they lost 6 out of the last 7 games of the season. I don't know how much more we can classify as a failure. So that's why I still have it the way I do. But look, I do not have any love for McCarthy. I think he's a guy that, I don't think is very good either. So I understand.
And Jason, how do you feel about it? Who both, one, the other, and what do you think of this one? The NFC is going to go through a lot of changes here this offseason.
I'm also going both, if we're being completely honest. But I would say McCarthy more than Sirianni, only because, yeah, we know everything Matt said was accurate with the Eagles. The assessment was spot on. But you can have the same, and if not a worse assessment for Dallas. They went, 3 straight, 13-win seasons? They went 16-0 at home in the regular season in the last 2 years, and you blew that game to Green Bay. And we know that in Dallas, you don't play for division titles. You play for Super Bowls. Now, whether they made it there in the last 28 years or not is a different story. But you still go there with that aspiration. They're like they are the Yankees of the NFL. You don't play in New York just to win the AL East. You play in New York to win the World Series. So you go to Dallas to try to win a Lombardi, and it's still not happening. So, and Mike McCarthy got fired mid-season from the Packers. Why did Dallas think that would be different now with him coaching there? He's also a guy similar to Sirianni. I mean, it's funny how these two names are in the mix because they're both similar. They're not really strong managers of people, or even calling their own plays, if you will. At least Mike McCarthy called his plays this year, but he's better suited as an OC versus an overall head coach. And with the situation in Dallas, we talked about culture earlier. Dallas's culture will always be toxic as long as Jerry Jones is involved in day-to-day operations. Dallas's culture will always be toxic until you allow a strong coach to come in there and just do his own thing from day one. Like you got to follow teams that have culture. Like, let's switch sports for a second. Like everyone in all professional sports should follow the Heat culture. What Pat Riley created in '95 is still reigning true today. The Heat culture is better than the Patriot way or the Spurs way. The Heat culture is what is the gold standard of cultures among professional sports organizations. And I don't think Dallas has had that, truthfully, since Barry Switzer. And Barry Switzer won with Jimmy's boys. So
Yeah, he did. That's true.
it's to me, it's McCarthy. He should never have another head coaching job again. And I think in Dallas, similar to Philly, I think both teams had to blow everything up. That's just me.
Yeah, and that could be the case. We're going to find out most likely by the end of the week or early next week the fate of both of those guys, Mike McCarthy and Nick Sirianni. So we'll see what happens. NFC East with some struggles, though. It was released yesterday, Jason, that next year it'll be the NFC East versus the AFC North.
AFC North. I've already circled the games. Y'all come to Baltimore.
Third action there. That's going to be a fun one for next year. But great show here tonight on a Tuesday. Just closing words as we go around. Special shout out and thanks to Dennis, of course, as always, for putting it all together. But we, again, later on the week, we'll have our divisional round. So it's been a fun year so far. Some great games coming up. Closing words, Matt, as we close out.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to, the NFL. Not in the traditional sense, but more in the management sense, because I love that we're seeing more representation with black coaches. I love that we're seeing more representation at the quarterback position. And I just love that finally we're getting credit for thinking the game as well as playing the game. It's been a long time. And now, I think we're starting to see, with the rising of candidates, we're starting to see more and more qualified people getting chances. And that's really, at the end of the day, all you could ask. Oh, and finally, I just want to say this. Somebody needs to interview and somebody needs to hire Eric Bieniemy. I don't care what anybody says. He took, what we saw in Washington. He took a QB that we all think is a marginal talent and made him respectable. He was the most sacked quarterback, and he had a high degree of interceptions. But listen, they won games they shouldn't have won this year, and he produced in ways that no one thought he could produce this year. So I just think Eric Bieniemy at this point, we need to start seeing some traction with him. I have heard there's some rumblings with him getting interviews as well. There should be, but at the end of the day, I just want to say, as much as we don't like the Rooney Rule, as much as people have dismissed some of the inclusion and some of the goals of diversity in the NFL, at the end of the day, too, we're starting to see some of the fruits of it. And I love it. Growing up as a kid in 1994, I didn't understand why Charlie Ward didn't get drafted. It made no sense to me. It's still one of those things now I look back, it still makes no sense to me. But there was a time in which players, regardless of what they did, just weren't getting that type of credit. They just said, you know what, if you're not going to play wide receiver, if you're not going to play another position, we're not going to draft you. So I love the fact that now we're seeing guys get drafted, measured, and weighed on their talent. And I love that we're seeing some representation. So that's all you could ask for, is everybody getting an equal chance to play this game that we love to watch. And that's really it at the end of the day for me.
Yeah, and Sam Howell led the NFL in passing after 10 weeks this year. He led the NFL in passing yards, Sam Howell. So, again, the big things there in Washington. And as we mentioned, hopefully, and should be, D'Amico Ryan should be the coach of the year. So we'll find that out in 3 or 4 weeks as well. Jason, closing words for our bow here on Super Wildcard Weekend as we head into the divisional round.
I would like to echo what Matt said. Not only are we seeing diversity in the coaching ranks, but we're seeing diversity in the GM ranks finally in the NFL on a more consistent basis. Look at the GM for the Lions. I mean, that just goes without question. 20 years ago, this guy was working at Enterprise Rental Car, trying to get a job, trying to get back into the NFL ranks or football ranks, and now he's probably going to be GM of the year for what he's done with the Lions. But also to say that there's a joke that Ron Burgundy said in the movie Anchorman that diversity was an old wooden ship, but not anymore in the NFL. They're actually trying to turn the corner. I hope it's not just for this year or for next year. I hope it's for years to come, and not just with people of color, but with women breaking into the coaching ranks and into the league office ranks, things of that nature. But my parting words would be this again. We had a problem with Amazon Prime games all year. Y'all know where I'm going with this. Mm-hmm. Why was a game on Peacock and Peacock only for that Chiefs game? I think that was the dumbest decision of all time. And you had people pay for a subscription, and because of the weather, some people were getting blackouts during that game because it was only on Peacock. So NFL, all money ain't good money. That's
exactly right. That's what they're thinking. They got paid $150 million by NBC for that game, and again, they're all about the money, so they made it work out in that situation. Now they're talking about playing games in Brazil, and they're going all over the place now. So we'll see how it all goes, and hopefully no more streamed playoff games. That's for sure as we go forward. But again, a great weekend of Super Wildcard games and now divisional games looking to be just as fun. We will be back again next week. We should be good on Monday next week to get back to our routine schedule. But there you have it, a little preview and sums up everything we saw over the weekend. A special shout out to Dennis for helping us out put everything together as always. And Matt, go ahead.
Just since we're on the diversity tip, be on the lookout. We actually have a white cornerback that's probably going to go in the first round this year.
Yes, we do.
Iowa. Ain't seen this since Jason Sehorn, brother.
Jason Sehorn.
So, that's it. That's fun. That's like 20 plus years ago. So, look, the NFL, it's changing, bro. Things are happening all over the board. Shout out to him. There's actual talk he's going to not even – we're not talking third, fourth round. They're talking about him in the top
first
10.
round. Yeah,
first round. Legit first round. Legit uber athlete. So look, man, shout out to him. And look, we're seeing everything this year. It's going to be a beautiful year.
Man, we'll see how it wraps up. It's going to be a great finish. And then also the NBA heating up as well. Sixers in action against the Nuggets tonight on TNT. So once football wraps up, we'll transition quickly into the basketball scene. But it's been a fun season so far and going to be even more fun this weekend. 4 fantastic games. Then we'll have our conference championship matchup set come next weekend. So next week's show is going to be a fun one for all of us here at DETV Sports. We will see you then. Thanks for tuning in. Of course.